Hi, I'm Rowena. They told everyone I was too busy to attend my sister's wedding, but I wasn't late. I wasn't missing, I was erased. My name was cut from the guest list, my face blurred from family photos. Then they stood on my property, my venue, smiling like nothing ever happened. So, I rented a helicopter and landed in the middle of their perfect lie. My mother looked away. My father went pale. And my sister? She froze, because for the first time, she couldn't control the story. But here's what you don't know. The betrayal didn't start at the wedding. Want to hear what came before the blade dropped? Saturday mornings used to be sacred. The kind of quiet I'd earned, not just by age or income, but by learning how to cut through life's noise. I'd wake up before the seagulls started arguing on the roof tiles, roll out my yoga mat, and move with a sort of ease I hadn't felt in my 20s. I'd always believed that freedom didn't just show up one day. It was built, slow and stubborn, like the kind of life I'd carved out for myself here in Santa Barbara. I lived alone by choice, not accident. I liked it that way. That morning, with my coffee in hand and the ocean just a whisper beyond the sliding doors, I sat on my sunlit porch scrolling through emails and texts. No red flags. Just the usual clutter of newsletter spam, a check-in from a colleague, a property manager update. And then I opened Facebook. There it was, bright and glossy, like everything she posted. Save the date, Callista plus Daniel, April 23rd, 4:00 p.m., ARV, the Wren Estate. Posted by a mutual friend, someone I hadn't seen since college, but who had clearly stayed on the guest list. I stared at it so long I forgot my coffee had gone cold. Surely, this was a mistake. Maybe my invitation got lost in the mail. Maybe it's coming digitally. Maybe she hadn't finalized the list. Except the post was public. Dozens of comments already. Can't wait! We'll be there. And not a single one mentioned me. My fingers hovered over my phone for a long moment before I tapped the screen. Wedding website, link in bio. I clicked it, hoping to see something, anything. Nope. Guest list, not searchable. RSVP. Password protected. I tried my birthday, our shared childhood address, the name of her dog. Nothing worked. I refreshed my email again. I opened the spam folder. Zilch. I still wasn't ready to believe it. Surely my sister didn't forget me. That wasn't possible, right? You don't forget your only sibling. You don't forget the person who paid for your business school deposit when your credit cards were maxed. You don't forget the one who drove 3 hours after her own breakup to hold your hand through yours. I tried one last thing, searched my name on the site, just in case. But it returned nothing, not even a mention. I could have swallowed it, ignored it, chalked it up to some digital glitch. But instead, I called Mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight like it always got when she knew something was coming. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "Everything okay?" "Did my wedding invite get lost?" I asked, direct. Silence. Just enough to slice through everything. "I think maybe the post office messed up. You know how unreliable they can be lately," she offered, a little too quickly. "Really?" I asked, keeping my tone level. "Because I just saw it online. Callista's wedding. 3 weeks from now. She announced it. Everyone knows." "Well, she's been very busy planning. I told her to send everything early, but you know your sister." I pressed my lips together. "No, I don't think I do." The line went quiet again. I imagined her twisting the phone cord, like she used to do when lying was still new to her. "I'm sure it's an oversight," she said, softer now. "Callista loves you. She forgot to invite me to her wedding, Mom. I'm not involved in all the logistics. She's handling it. It's her day." That sentence, that always safe, always cowardly fallback. It's her day. As if that excused everything. "I see," I said finally. "Thanks." I hung up without waiting for her to respond. I wish I could say I was surprised. But the truth was, I'd seen it coming. Not this exact moment, maybe, but the slow fade, the way Callista's texts got shorter, how our calls became rare and strained. She'd always been the center of the room, the kind who didn't just need the spotlight, but made sure no one else could find it. But I never thought she'd erase me completely. I went back inside, sat at my desk, and opened our last message thread. Nothing since Christmas. She'd sent me a picture of her engagement ring with a single emoji. I'd responded with, "It's beautiful, congratulations." No reply. That was 4 months ago. I opened my journal. The leather cover was worn from years of carrying truths I hadn't said out loud. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "They didn't forget me, they removed me." I sat back, staring at those 7 words. They didn't feel bitter, just true. I clicked open the wedding countdown clock again. 21 days. The site played gentle piano music and showed a slow slideshow of Callista and Daniel in vineyards, laughing on boats, posing with golden retrievers they didn't own. My hands clenched. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my mug across the room. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and said to myself, no, said to her, to them, to anyone who ever thought they could decide whether or not I belonged. If I'm not welcome on their terms, I'll arrive on mine. The clock above the kitchen stove blinked 6:42 p.m. when I finally picked up my phone again. I hadn't moved much since that morning, just wandered around the house, waiting for my thoughts to untangle into something clear. They hadn't. But silence can be its own answer, and in my family, it often was. I typed out a message, stared at it for a moment, and hit send. "Hey, saw the save the date online. Is everything okay?" That was it. No blame, no accusation, just a window cracked open for her to walk through. And then I waited. By the time the sun started sliding into the Pacific, I still hadn't heard back. I'd checked my phone at least a dozen times. Each time, nothing. I told myself she was busy, maybe in a dress fitting or locked into a vendor meeting. But deep down, I felt the weight of it. That kind of quiet doesn't come from distraction. It comes from decision. Her response came at 9:17 p.m. "Didn't want to burden you with travel. Figured you'd be busy." No greeting, no punctuation, no apology. I stared at the screen as if those words were still being typed, as if the message might evolve into something more human. But it didn't. That was the end of it. A dozen memories rushed at me all at once. Me sitting on her dorm floor freshman year, crying with her after her first heartbreak. The time I co-signed on her first apartment lease because her credit was trashed. Every birthday dinner I organized when she forgot her own. This wasn't just a miscommunication. This was a rewrite of our story, and she'd cast me out without a second thought. I set my phone down gently, almost reverently, as if I were placing something fragile that had already cracked. For years, I'd accepted her little vanishing acts, canceling plans last minute, forgetting important dates, turning every conversation into a monologue about her career or her latest spa cleanse. But this was deliberate. I moved to the sofa, still clutching my mug of herbal tea, though it had long since gone cold. I opened Instagram, not to stalk her, but to confirm. And there it was, her newest post. A collage of engagement photos under the caption, "Can't wait to celebrate with the people who've always been there." People who've always been there, I murmured aloud, the taste of those words bitter in my mouth. Scrolling through the comments, my eyes stopped on one name, Lydia Vaughn. Lydia and I had been roommates for 2 years in college. We'd cried together over finals, over parents, over exes. We'd once made a pact that no matter where life took us, we'd always have each other's backs. Now there she was, front and center in the comments. "So honored to be a part of your big day, babe. Let's get glam." The casual cruelty of it stunned me. I tapped on Lydia's profile, and there she was, tagging Callista in try-on sessions for bridesmaid dresses, sharing event graphics, even resharing the venue announcement with hashtags like Syash Ren Wedding and Glow Up 2025. I messaged her, "Hey, just saw your post. Didn't know you and Callista were so close these days." The reply came fast, too fast. "Hey, Ro. Yeah, it kind of came together quickly. I hope you're good, though. I waited a beat, then typed. Was surprised not to get an invite. Just wondering what changed. Three dots appeared, blinked, disappeared. Then finally, it's complicated. I work for her event sponsor now. There's a lot going on. I can't really get in the middle. There it was. I stared at those words, cold and clinical. I can't really get in the middle. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I wish it were different. Just another locked door I wasn't welcome to knock on anymore. I put my phone face down on the coffee table and leaned back into the couch. She wasn't just excluding me. She was making sure no one else questioned it. This wasn't personal. It was strategy. I thought back to all the times Callista had rewritten reality with a smile. Like the time she told our relatives I hadn't wanted to come to Thanksgiving when I'd actually been home with the flu. Or the way she cropped me out of her influencer reels with the excuse that the frame just didn't fit. She didn't confront. She just omitted. And every time I'd let it slide, told myself it wasn't worth the argument. That was on me. Well, not anymore. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I stood up, walked to the sliding doors, and stepped out onto the balcony. The sky was cotton candy pink, fading into lavender, the kind of sunset that begged for poetry I didn't have the heart to give. I wrapped my arms around myself, not for warmth, but to hold on to something that was mine. My body, my truth, my place. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd closed the door, slowly, carefully, and made sure it didn't creak. But I was still standing on the other side. Not knocking. Planning. I went inside, grabbed a pen, and opened my planner. Across the top of the next page, I wrote, Day 1 of reclaiming my story. And then, in block letters beneath it, if she thinks silence means surrender, she forgot who raised me. The sky outside was a thick, chalky gray, the kind of color that made you pause before opening the blinds. It matched the quiet inside my house, the kind that hums under your skin when you know something isn't right, but you can't name it yet. The kettle clicked off. I poured my tea but left it untouched. My laptop sat open on the desk, cursor blinking on the search bar. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. Proof? Closure? Maybe just something to confirm that what I felt wasn't just paranoia with better posture. I started where anyone would, my inbox. Years of emails with Callista, forwarded messages, shared itineraries from family trips, gift lists for birthdays, Christmases. All there, a trail of sisterhood that used to mean something. I typed Callista into the search bar. Over 300 threads popped up. I scrolled. Nothing jumped out until I spotted one labeled Venue Media Strategy, forwarded from a mutual acquaintance, Maya, from Callista's college PR team, who had once tried to pitch my real estate firm for a branding campaign. I'd almost forgotten we were still synced through Drive Access. Inside was an email thread I wasn't supposed to see. Subject: Concerns, emotional stability plus public perception. I clicked. There it was. An email from Callista to the event planner, dated 2 months prior. She's emotionally unpredictable, it read. We've had incidents in the past. Not ideal for high-visibility moments. I think it's best we keep her involvement minimal. Quiet, controlled, no speaking roles. Not ideal for high-visibility moments. It felt like someone had opened a hidden drawer inside my chest and rifled through it without asking. Not because it hurt, I was past hurt, but because it confirmed everything I'd pretended not to know. This wasn't about invitations or guest lists. This was about image control, and I had become the blemish she needed to airbrush. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and tried to remember when this all began. Not just the exclusion, but the rewriting. There was the time I defended her during a PR scandal 3 years ago. She'd posted an insensitive caption, and I stayed up all night editing her apology statement. The next day, she gave full credit to her manager on a podcast interview. Or the Thanksgiving she told the family I chose not to come, when in truth I was home with strep throat and had texted her a dozen times about it. She didn't lie outright. She curated. She didn't accuse. She implied. And I had let it slide, over and over, because pointing out the obvious felt like begging for scraps from a table she didn't want me at anymore. I stood, opened the drawer of my filing cabinet, and pulled out a dusty envelope. I didn't have to check the label. I knew exactly what it was. Maid of honor, speech draft, Callista's engagement party. I unfolded the paper. My handwriting stared back at me. I'd written it in the middle of a sleepless week, after flying in from a conference, juggling deadlines, and still showing up because that's what you do for family. I'd written jokes, memories, a soft tribute to the sisterhood we used to share. I never got to read it. She canceled the toast last minute, said it didn't fit the flow of the night. At the time, I believed her. Now I saw it for what it was, the beginning of my slow edit out of her narrative. No dress fitting, no schedule update, no email, not even a courtesy text this time. I sat back down, this time with intention. I opened a new document on my laptop and typed the title, The Pattern. Not a diary, not a tell-all, just a map of every moment she closed the door and pretended it never existed. In my journal, I wrote a single line. She's not confused, she's consistent. It hit harder than I expected. But it was clean. Final. Like a glass of water set down a little too hard. I sat there for a while. The rain started, soft at first, then steadier. The kind of California rain that always feels a little guilty for showing up. I picked up my phone and opened the wedding site again. The homepage hadn't changed. I tapped Meet the Family. It loaded slowly. White background, soft music, a collage of smiling faces. Mom, Dad, Callista, her fiancé's parents, even her college roommate from freshman year. But not me. No photo, no name, not even a footnote. Her name wasn't missing by accident. It was erased on purpose, again and again. The clouds hung low over the hills as I drove through my old neighborhood. The kind of gray that didn't threaten rain, but reminded you things could turn at any moment. Every familiar curve in the road was layered with memories I didn't want, but couldn't help noticing. The tree I once climbed and broke my wrist from. The mailbox I'd painted with Mom during a summer. I still believed we were close. Each turn, a ghost. I hadn't called ahead. I didn't want to give her time to prepare a script. I didn't want soft lighting and preheated apologies. I wanted the truth, raw, unedited, and preferably without the usual half-sweet tea and deflection. Vera opened the door with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rowena," she said, like a question and a statement at once. "I won't stay long," I replied. "Can we talk?" She stepped aside, gesturing me in. Of course. The living room hadn't changed in years. Same floral couch, same pictures, same habit of pretending things were fine because it looked nicer. "Tea?" she offered, already walking to the kitchen. I followed her, not sitting. "Sure. If we're doing tea, let's do it." We sat across from each other, cups in hand. The silence filled the room like a third guest. "I saw the wedding page," I said finally. "No Meet the Family section for me," I noticed. Vera looked down, adjusted the sugar spoon beside her napkin. "Callista curated everything herself. You know how she is with aesthetics." "And I guess my face doesn't match the aesthetic?" She looked up, startled. "That's not what I meant." "Then say what you did mean." Her lips pressed together. She thought it would be simpler this way, less drama. I leaned in slightly. "Did she think that? Or did Dad?" Vera hesitated. A beat too long. I watched her crumble slowly, like sugar dissolving in lukewarm tea. "The venue," she said finally, "was chosen because of how it looks on social media. Her sponsors like that clean luxury. They want predictable guests, clean branding. Your recent disagreement with her made her nervous. She didn't want to risk it." "My recent disagreement?" I repeated, voice low. "Or my unwillingness to play along with her lies?" Vera looked out the window. "Your father said it might be easier if you didn't attend. He contributed significantly to the wedding. He just didn't want tension." There it was, laid bare. Did you all forget whose name is on that deed? I asked, tone clipped. That venue you all picked for its lighting and angles? That's my property. I signed the deal. I funded the renovation. I walked the land when it was nothing but dirt and a broken fence. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. I used to think you stayed quiet to keep the peace, I said, standing. But I see it now. You stay quiet because it's easier than standing up. That's not fair, she murmured, barely audible. Neither is being erased, I replied. On my way out, I paused in the hallway. A new photo hung beside the thermostat. Family Christmas, last year. Everyone dressed in coordinated colors, seated around the fireplace I used to hang stockings on. I wasn't in it. I hadn't been invited. I closed the front door behind me gently, as if the softness of my exit might balance the weight of everything unsaid inside. Back home, the air smelled like cedar and something clean. My house never lied to me. It didn't pretend. It held my grief and my strength in equal measure. I walked straight to the file cabinet in my office and pulled out the folder marked Ren Estate Joint Contract. Inside were deeds, partnership documents, every proof needed to remind the world, and Callista, that I wasn't some forgotten relative or unstable footnote. I was the foundation beneath their fantasy. They controlled the guest list, but I owned the venue. The next morning, the ocean was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I stood in front of my office whiteboard, uncapped a red marker, and drew a bold line straight across the center. Below it, I wrote one sentence in all caps. This is where it changes. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt overdue. I'd let Callista bend the truth long enough. I'd watched Vera sidestep every opportunity to protect me. And Thurston, he hadn't just looked away. He'd played his hand and pretended it was fate. But now it was my turn. No more waiting to be acknowledged. No more trusting other people to set the narrative. My phone rang just as I capped the marker. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Rowena? A man's voice said cautiously. It's Galen. Galen Priest. The wedding planner. I didn't speak at first, unsure if I'd heard correctly. I probably shouldn't be calling, he said quickly, but I needed to. Go ahead, I said, sitting at my desk. Say whatever it is before you talk yourself out of it. He exhaled. I wasn't supposed to reach out, but after everything, after seeing your name pulled from every version of the event program, the website, even the press kit, I couldn't just stay silent. It's not right. Who gave those instructions? I asked, though I already knew. Your sister and your father, he admitted. I was told it would ruin the optics if people knew the venue was yours, that you were involved at all. It was about clean branding, keeping the image tight. Clean branding, I repeated. Interesting choice of words. They used your name during early negotiations, he continued, voice lower now. Your name helped secure the location, but once the sponsor deals locked in, everything shifted. Suddenly, Callista was visionary co-founder on every document. I didn't respond. I'm sorry, Galen said quietly. You deserve better than this. He wasn't wrong, but apologies didn't repair what was stolen. They didn't rewrite contracts or undo erasure. After the call ended, I stayed frozen for a moment. Then I stood and walked to the file cabinet near the window. I unlocked the bottom drawer and pulled out a slim folder labeled Equity Contracts. Inside was the original venue agreement, my investment receipts, land acquisition records, partnership terms, every piece of proof I needed. I set the folder on my desk and stared at the window's reflection. I saw a woman who used to avoid conflict, who thought being silent was synonymous with grace, who thought her contributions would speak for themselves. But they hadn't. They'd been hijacked, repackaged, assigned to someone prettier in a white dress. I didn't just lose a seat at the table, I whispered. I built the damn table, and they brought someone else to sit at it. I powered on the camera embedded in my laptop and opened a fresh video file. I looked into the lens, heart steady, voice calm. This isn't about revenge, I began. It's about restoring the truth. If anything happens to me, or if this goes public before I'm ready, this is my statement of record. I spoke plainly, clearly, outlined the timeline of my involvement, the investments, the branding deceit. I named names. When I finished, I transferred the video onto a flash drive and slipped it into a small fireproof safe in the closet, labeling it, "Deliver if needed." Then I picked up my phone again and dialed. "Karen," I said when my attorney answered, "we need to review the venue clause, particularly ownership rights and usage restrictions. I have a feeling we'll be invoking them soon." I hung up and walked back to the whiteboard. That red line still stared at me. I added one more note beside it. If you don't define your place in the world, someone else will write you out of it. They wanted a wedding without my name? Let's see how they manage a venue without my consent. It was 2:03 a.m. when I opened my eyes, not startled, but dragged awake by the weight pressing on my chest. I didn't dream anymore. Not of Callista, not of my parents. What haunted me now was replay, not fantasy. Silence doesn't echo. It loops. I lay flat, hands across my stomach, watching the ceiling. I thought about Galen's voice cracking on the phone 2 days ago, about Vera's hesitant eyes dodging truth like it might set the curtains on fire. I thought about my father, always a man of pronouncements, declaring over dinner one night when I was 13, "Silence is how you keep power. People fear what you don't explain." Maybe they did, but what no one talks about is what it costs the person being silenced. I got up without turning on the light. The moon spilled just enough glow across the floor to guide me to the file drawer in the corner of my bedroom. I pulled it open, took the manila envelope marked "Venue, Original Terms," and held it in my lap on the edge of the bed. I didn't plan to mail it. Not yet. Not like this. Some things need to simmer before they're served. I tucked the envelope into a leather satchel and placed it by the door, ready for whenever "not yet" became "now." The sky had just started to pale when I wandered into the living room and sat on the floor beside my bookshelf. There was a stack of hardcovers I hadn't opened in years, sentimental clutter I never had the heart to throw out. One of them, a novel about daughters and forgiveness, had something slipped between the pages. I pulled it free and unfolded the yellowing paper. My mother's handwriting. I recognized the slight rightward lean, the way her lowercase g curved in at the bottom. It wasn't addressed. No greeting, no signature. Just the start of something she never had the guts to finish. "I know we've let you down. I wish I had the courage to speak up sooner. You've always carried more than your share, and I never said thank you the way I should have. I hope one day you'll understand the silence wasn't personal. It was survival." There was no envelope, no date, just guilt pressed in ink. I sat with that letter in my hand for a long time, the house so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycle off. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. That version of me was gone. She hadn't mailed it because she knew it would have forced a confrontation, and confronting meant risking the balance she and Thurston had curated their whole lives, neat, quiet, and free of visible cracks. But the real fracture had been growing for years, and it had my name running through the center. By mid-morning, I was standing on my front porch with a coffee in one hand when I spotted the package. No label, no return address, just brown paper taped neat. Inside was a photo album. The leather spine was worn, and the corners had faded from years of handling. My throat tightened as I opened it. Every family holiday, every beach day, every school performance or birthday party, all there. But I wasn't. In photo after photo, there was a suspicious empty space beside Callista. Sometimes the edges of a shoulder cropped out, or a shadow where I should have been. One photo, my high school graduation, had been digitally altered. I recognized the background, the seating, the gown. But instead of me beside Thurston and Vera, it was just Callista, centered, framed in glowing edits. They hadn't just moved on. They rewrote me out. I closed the album and stared at the cover. This is what emotional orphaning looks like. They didn't bury me, they erased me. But they forgot something. I kept everything. The photos they cropped, the emails they deleted, the legal documents they pretended didn't exist. I kept them all. Because some of us remember, even when it hurts. Back in my reading nook, I opened my planner and wrote 3 words. Deliver with silence. The letter, the album, the ownership papers. I didn't need to scream. All I had to do was show them what they'd erased. The garden was still damp with dew when I stepped outside, barefoot, coffee in hand. Sunrise hadn't quite broken through the clouds, but the birds were already quarreling in the trees. I used to find this hour peaceful, sacred even. Now it felt like the calm before something cracked wide open. It wasn't war yet, but the troops were already moving. Back inside, I opened my laptop and clicked into the latest forwarded email thread from an old colleague at a boutique PR firm. She wasn't trying to gossip, not exactly, but the subject line said enough. FYI, internal edits. Attached was a screenshot from the final wedding guest list draft. Next to my name, strike through. Beneath it, a note in red. Not attending, personal reasons. I stared at the words for a long moment, not because they hurt, but because they proved what I'd already known. They weren't pretending anymore. They'd replaced me with a placeholder. They rewrote the narrative. Again, I said to no one. I closed the email and opened Instagram. I hadn't touched the app in days, but I knew I needed to see what was being said. Callista had posted a story an hour earlier. A looping video. Her twirling in a cream-colored robe while her bridesmaids clapped around her. Captioned with the words, "So grateful for the love and support, keeping it intimate and drama-free." There I was, barely. Blurred in the corner of an old family photo embedded in a slideshow behind them. My figure cropped, distorted, not fully removed, but stripped of clarity. The comment section was a minefield. You're so wise to protect your peace. Cutting toxicity is self-care. Love that for you. I wish I had your courage, girl. Boundaries. I didn't feel rage, not right away. I felt studied. Like I was a character in a story Callista had rewritten so carefully, no one questioned where the real person went. I clicked out of the app and opened my blog dashboard. I hadn't written a post in nearly a year. Not since the housing market crash took over my time and energy. But this wasn't about real estate. It was about space. And who gets to take it up? New post title, The Things We Don't Say at Weddings. I wrote without naming her. Without naming anyone. But the knife didn't need names. It had edge. I've learned that silence is often labeled as elegance. But sometimes it's just cowardice in pearls. When people erase you, they'll dress it up as protecting the vibe, or avoiding drama. What they mean is, they didn't think you'd fight back. I didn't hit publish yet. Instead, I saved it to draft and opened the wedding website one last time. Navigation was clunky, but I found the Meet the Family section. There they were. Vera, smiling wide beside Thurston, hand on his lap like a pageant wife. Callista, centered and glowing, with a caption that read, "Our bride, the heart of our legacy." Even cousin Becky from Vermont had a headshot and a quip. But me? Absent. As if I'd never existed. As if I were a childhood friend who'd moved away, not the sister who paid the down payment for the venue they were celebrating in. I closed the tab, stood, and walked to the window. The morning haze had thickened. A breeze stirred the lemon tree in the backyard, shaking petals loose onto the patio. I took a deep breath, opened my inbox, and drafted an email to my legal team. Subject: Urgent, Clause 17. Execution Body. Please initiate legal review and enforcement of Clause 17 in the venue agreement RE. Ownership rights, event usage violations, and brand misrepresentation. No signature needed. I hit send. Then I whispered aloud, with no one around to hear it but the air. I didn't start this, but I won't let them finish it on a lie. They silenced me on the invitation, but I held the keys to the building. I arrived 2 hours before the ceremony, exactly as I'd planned. The sky was clear, the sun unbothered, and the parking lot unusually quiet for what should have been the biggest event in my sister's life. The security guard stepped forward the moment my tires touched the gravel near the private entrance. "Ma'am, this section's restricted. Guests are being redirected through the south entrance." I lowered the window and met his gaze calmly. "Rowena Blythe," I said. "I'm the co-founder of this venue. Check your records." He didn't blink. "I'm sorry, but you're not on the authorized guest list. I've been instructed not to allow anyone not cleared in advance." I tilted my head. "And who issued those instructions?" He paused. "Event lead. The bride's family." I nodded once, then put the car in reverse. "Understood." He watched me go, probably thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a private hangar, eyes closed behind tinted aviators, listening to the low whir of the helicopter warming up. The pilot, hired 2 weeks ago under a different name, didn't ask questions. I appreciated that. Meanwhile, the live stream of the wedding had started. I watched on my phone as Callista stood under the arch of imported florals, mic in hand. "I'm heartbroken to share that my sister Rowena couldn't make it today," she said with a tremble in her voice only the camera could pick up. "She had prior commitments, but I know she's supporting us in spirit." There it was again. The official lie. The same one Vera had sold over coffee. The same narrative Thurston had funded. I didn't flinch. I didn't rage. I simply slid my phone into my clutch and gave the pilot a single nod. The rotors cut through the afternoon air like a razor. By the time the guests heard the thudding rhythm above their heads, I was already in position, descending slowly in a tailored neutral-tone dress that didn't beg for attention, but commanded it. Phones came out. People pointed. The camera crew scrambled, assuming it was a planned surprise. It wasn't. I stepped down gracefully, thanking the pilot without turning back. The crowd parted without a word. No one dared stop me. I said nothing as I moved through them. Faces turned, eyes widened. The florist gasped. I caught whispers. "Is that her?" "That's Rowena. I thought she wasn't coming." A journalist in attendance didn't ask. She just wrote, snapping a photo as I passed. "That's the co-founder, isn't it?" I didn't break stride. Inside the reception hall, I approached the gift table, laid down a sealed envelope containing a copy of the venue deed, and stepped away. No fuss, no announcement. From the corner of my eye, I caught Vera's pale face just beyond the curtain. Her hand was on Thurston's arm. He looked like he'd bitten into a lemon, and Callista. She stood frozen, her posture perfect, her breath stolen. They had the mic, but I had the crowd. I left the hall and walked the stone path toward the lake. Alone, unseen by the coordinators, but followed by every pair of eyes in that room. I stood at the edge of the water, the ceremony delayed, the music faltering behind me. They'd edited me out of the story, but I just wrote myself back in. No microphone, no spotlight. Just the pause in the music and the shift in air pressure when I walked back into the reception hall. The kind of silence that travels faster than sound. People turned. Not dramatically, but cautiously, like they weren't sure what my presence meant yet. I wasn't holding a glass or wearing a corsage. I didn't wave or smile. I just walked, slow and deliberate, across the polished floor toward the far end of the room. A small group of women near the dessert table hushed mid-laugh. One of them, a former acquaintance from a fundraiser, offered a nod that was more reflex than recognition. I gave her nothing. The slideshow resumed above the stage, a sentimental backdrop behind Callista's thank you speech. She stood there, radiant, flawless, pretending not to notice that half the eyes had shifted from her to me. Then I heard it. When I think of resilience, I think of the people who've shaped me, like my big sister, who always said, "Strength isn't loud, it's consistent." My spine stiffened. That was my line. Word for word from a letter I wrote her on her 25th birthday. I'd stayed up all night handwriting it after our mother's cancer scare, thinking we were rebuilding something. A murmur rippled through the tables. Someone leaned toward me, an older woman in navy blue sequins, holding a flute of champagne. "That's your quote, isn't it?" I gave her the smallest nod. The woman didn't say anything else. She just turned back to the stage, but her posture changed. A stiffness in the shoulders that hadn't been there before. It wasn't anger that rose in me, not anymore. It was confirmation. As I drifted closer to the back of the room, a small hand tugged at the hem of my dress. I looked down. A flower girl, maybe 6. Lace gloves and oversized curls. She blinked up at me, head tilted. "Are you the lady who brings the gifts?" I crouched so we were eye level. "Not today, sweetheart," I whispered, "but I brought something better." Her eyes lit up, then she ran back to her cousins, giggling. Around me, conversations started to shift. "She's here? I thought she wasn't invited. Didn't she help build this place?" A man with a name tag from the venue's architecture firm leaned toward another guest. "Rowena Blythe owns majority stake in this venue. She's why this building even exists." From across the room, I saw Vera. Rigid, pale, glass in hand, like she needed a prop to stay standing. Beside her, Callista stood frozen. She didn't wave, didn't blink, just stared, her eyes burning holes into everything around me. Thurston was gone. Smart man. Or at least tactical. I didn't return the stare. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked to the back of the room, where the slideshow tech sat hunched behind a folding table and a laptop. "Play this next," I said, handing him a flash drive. "Don't pause, don't cut, just let it run." He looked at me, then at the drive. I saw the moment recognition hit him. He nodded once and slid it into the port. The screen above faded to black. The chatter softened. Forks paused mid-air. They had the mic, but I had the crowd's attention. The MC cleared his throat and tapped the microphone with more hesitation than enthusiasm. "We'd like to take a few minutes," he said, scanning the room as though gauging permission, "to show a very special memory reel curated by the bride and her team." His voice disappeared beneath the whisper of the projector kicking on. The screen faded to black, and then it began. Not Callista's glossy engagement montage, not stock music and Pinterest-filtered perfection. My video. Footage faded in. Callista and me at 6 years old, sitting on the floor of our childhood living room, icing cupcakes with blue frosting and faces smeared with laughter. Then cut to a home movie clip, her college graduation. My voice, off camera, cheering louder than anyone. Then a jump, us standing shoulder to shoulder at the groundbreaking ceremony of the venue. I had the shovel in my hand, I had signed the deed. And now, finally, I had the audience. The room didn't make a sound. Some watched wide-eyed, some covered their mouths. One woman blinked slowly, as though trying to compute what she was seeing. Because no one had expected this, not after the official narrative they'd been sold. "She was there through everything," I heard someone whisper behind me. Lydia Vaughn, dressed in a gown a shade too pale for her complexion, leaned into another bridesmaid. "I didn't know she helped build this place," she murmured, not realizing I stood less than 10 feet away. I turned slightly, just enough to make eye contact. Lydia flinched. "Let her." More clips rolled. Silent, factual, undeniable. My voice narrating a pitch for the venue concept, one Callista had co-opted. Screenshots of our early investment documents, emails with my signature. A photo of me holding the first design blueprint with a caption underneath. The foundation no one saw coming. And then it came. The contract. Blown up in full clarity on the projector screen. Venue co-founders, Callista Wren, 48%. Rowena Blythe, 52%. There it was, highlighted in soft gold. The silence broke. Guests gasped. A few phones came out, snapping shots of the screen like they needed proof to tell their friends later. On stage, Callista didn't move. Vera's hand shot to her mouth. Thurston stood a few feet behind them, arms crossed, his jaw locked in stone. None of them said a word, and none of them could stop it. The last image froze across the screen. A photo of Callista and me, hugging in the backyard of our parents' home, years ago, back when our smiles were still real and not curated. Underneath, a caption read, "Family is earned, not assigned." Applause didn't explode. It rose slowly, like a wave gaining momentum. One guest stood, then another. "She's not the outsider," a man said aloud. "She's the backbone." I didn't speak. I didn't bow or offer some dramatic monologue. I simply nodded once and stepped off to the side. As I passed by the MC, his eyes met mine. They were wide, questioning, but not hostile. "You planned this?" he whispered. I held his gaze. "I preserved it." And then I walked toward the open doors, past stunned guests and former friends who no longer knew where to look. I didn't need them to say sorry. I just needed them to be seen flinching at the truth. Twilight wrapped the venue in a soft gray hush as I stood beneath the old oak tree near the parking lot. The reception hall glowed behind me, distant laughter, champagne glasses clinking, someone's heels clicking across polished tile. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to watch them return to normal, not after the night had bent around the truth and refused to snap back. After impact comes silence, not peace, but the sound of everything shifting. I leaned against the tree, arms crossed loosely, letting the cool air settle against my skin. It was the first time all day I felt weightless, not unburdened, but no longer buried. I heard the soft crunch of gravel behind me and didn't need to look to know who it was. "Rowena," Vera said, voice tight. I stayed still. She came to stand beside me, not too close, her shawl pulled tight across her shoulders. "I didn't know they'd go that far," she said, almost like a confession. "The video, the documents. I didn't know you still had all that." I kept my voice even. "Of course I did." She was quiet for a moment. "You didn't deserve any of it. You know that, right?" I looked at her slowly. "And you knew it was happening." Vera's lips pressed together. "I was proud of you," she said, softer now. "Even when I stayed silent." I let that sit in the air between us. I didn't owe her softness in return, but I didn't feel the need to be cruel either. "I didn't need your pride," I said. "I needed your spine." Her eyes blinked rapidly, the kind of blinking that held back tears or words or both. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, don't. An apology would ask me to absolve something I haven't even finished grieving." We stood in silence. There were no hugs, no music swells, just two women, bound by blood, standing in the ruins of what one of them refused to protect. She turned and walked away slowly, her shoes crunching against the gravel like distant thunder. Then I saw her, Callista, standing farther off, arms crossed, watching from behind a cluster of topiaries. She didn't step forward. She didn't wave. She just stared at me like I was something she couldn't Photoshop out. And I stared back. Not angry, not smug, just steady. Because now, finally, she saw it. The one thing she couldn't fake. Courage. Thurston emerged from behind her, his expression unreadable. He put a hand on her back, guided her toward the waiting limo. Neither of them looked at me again. Inside the guest restroom, I found myself alone with my reflection. No makeup left. Hair undone. Dress slightly wrinkled from hours of heat and tension. But for the first time, I didn't look like someone trying to hold it all together. I looked like someone who already had. I wasn't restored. I was revealed. As I stepped out of the restroom, my phone buzzed. A message from Bill Holcomb, a former board member of the venue investment firm. "Heard the truth. You handled it with grace. Let's talk Monday." No emojis, no fluff, just acknowledgement. And respect. I didn't walk back into the reception. There was nothing left in that building I needed. I headed down the path toward the parking lot, the trees rustling gently overhead. No one followed. And I didn't look back. My story didn't end with their silence. It began when I stopped needing their voices to write it. The morning after the wedding, I pulled into the circular drive of Thurston's estate with the windows up and engine still running. There was no guard posted, no movement behind the blinds, just the kind of stillness that follows a storm when nobody wants to acknowledge what blew through. I stepped out, envelope in hand, the seal already signed with red wax and embossed initials. I didn't knock. Instead, I walked up the steps, placed the thick manila folder right at the front door, and tucked a note under the flap. Contract Clause 17. Breach. No threats, no fanfare. Just the truth delivered to the doorstep that once told me I was too loud for peace, too much for legacy. The door remained closed. Later that afternoon, the story broke. Local news stations aired a quiet but piercing segment, 5 minutes long, tight edits, zero dramatics. Just facts. Wedding venue co-founder Rowena Blythe exercises ownership rights following public omission from event materials. The anchor read, her tone firm but restrained. Behind her played B-roll of the venue. The lake, the arch, the empty aisle after the ceremony. My name wasn't mentioned by Callista, but now it was printed across the chyron. Co-founder, 52%, owner. A reporter read from the statement my attorney had released that morning. The integrity of truth must outlive the decor of silence. This isn't a gesture of hostility. It's one of clarity. We do not erase people to protect illusions. What they didn't say on air, but what started circulating faster in private group chats, was the story of the letter. A handwritten note, found in the wedding gift pile by a hotel staffer, mistakenly left unsealed and addressed to Vera. It was Callista's handwriting, no mistaking that. "Mom," it began, "we need to ensure Rowena is completely left out. No pictures, no acknowledgements. Don't let her show up. I've already spoken with Galen and the design team. This needs to be clean." A junior planner had watched Vera receive the letter and, shaken, handed it directly to venue staff who, unsure of the legal implications, brought it to my office the next morning. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I simply scanned it, filed a copy, and handed it to my legal team. Let the record show. Erasure, orchestrated. That afternoon, I met briefly with the board in my venue's conference room. The air was still thick with what had played out the day before, but the decision was unanimous. I announced my exit. "I'm selling my stake," I said. "Not back to the family, not to any name tied to this event. I'm transferring it to the Willow Foundation, women-owned, transparency-focused, and interested in expanding affordable event spaces in underserved areas." Murmurs. Then a single hand clap. A slow nod. "Let them build their legacy," I added, "without the bricks I laid." An hour later, I received a message from Callista. "Can we meet?" The conversation, if you could call it that, happened in the venue's bridal lounge. She came alone, arms crossed, face unreadable. No makeup this time, hair pulled back tight. "I didn't expect the video," she said. "I figured." She swallowed. "You didn't have to go that far." I tilted my head. This wasn't revenge. This was a receipt. She shifted uncomfortably. "You don't know how much pressure I was under." "You don't get to rewrite the past," I said evenly. "You only get to live with it." There was nothing left to say. She knew it. We stood for a long beat, two sisters in the shell of a lie, too well rehearsed to hold up. Then she left. Just like that. Before locking the office for the last time, I walked up to the bridal suite. The room was quiet, scattered with ribbons and forgotten corsages. I stood in the center and looked around, where dreams were sold, selfies were taken, and one woman had planned a wedding without her sister. I set the package gently on the settee near the vanity. A hand-bound photo album. Every picture Callista had ever cropped me out of. Restored. Reprinted. The final page. A photo of us as children. I was hugging her from behind. She was laughing. The caption below, You can't delete what I survived. There was no next chapter in their story for me, but I'd already started writing my own.